Welcome to another episode of the Saddle Up Show with Shaq and Destin. But my man not here. My man Destin had some obligations that he had to take care of. So I told him, sure, I'm gonna hold the fort down. I could take care of it. I'll do it. Why not? I'm such an outstanding gentleman. I stand in for my friends. You gotta support your friends. But yeah, man, Destin say he ain't gonna be able to rock out the night. But we're gonna have a good time, man. Y'all showed up and showed out on Twitter. Got a lot of questions that y'all want me to answer. And this show is gonna be a lot less structured because it's just me. So I'm gonna talk to you guys. We can start off with OTAs since that's such a hot topic that's on the docket. It's really the only thing going on right now. Seeing how the rookies is blending in with the vets, and that's been exciting for us. I know everyone was upset last week because all we got was pretty much 1 day of media access, and that's pretty much all we're going to get this week as well. Teams typically try to be a little more secretive while they're installing new things and catching the rookies up and getting them up to speed with where the vets are. I know it's not mandatory, so a lot of the vets are showing up and they're standing on the sideline, and people is getting nervous, and are people missing practices, and people are nervous. It's not mandatory. Don't worry, no one's holding out as far as contractually that I know of or that I've been made aware of from anybody. Uh, I know we saw Gardner and Anthony Richardson pretty much split reps last week, with Anthony Richardson getting more with the ones than Gardner actually did. But I think that's important too, and we can start there. I know a lot of people are saying they wished Anthony Richardson would have got all the number one reps, but that just can't happen right now, not knowing if he's for sure going to be the starter. I think he will be, but if you don't know for a fact right now, then you have to give Gardner a chance to get some reps with those guys because you need him to be up to speed with if he's asked to play. If he's actually has to start, and you've given Anthony Richardson all of the number one reps, then you're kind of handicapping yourself and doing a disservice to your team. So you got to give him some reps. But Anthony Richardson did have more reps with the ones than Gardner Minshew did. For those of you that was confused about it or didn't know the exact count. Uh, but yeah, man, y'all get a chance to get in here, and we're gonna chop it up, man. Shout out to Nathan. Nathan's the first one to post a comment. He did. What's up? We're gonna have fun today. I got a bunch of questions from people, and as you guys know, y'all could just send y'all questions in the chat. Uh, and I'll get to them because this is a free show. There's not much going on. It's dry, so we're gonna talk about a little bit of everything. We'll start off pretty much with what's going on right now, and we'll kind of just maneuver our way throughout. Shout out to my man Drake already dropping a fire question in here. That's OTA related, so I'll get to that one first before I actually even start with the questions that I received on Twitter. We're gonna do this thing the same way though. Pretty much rate at names. We like to do that up here. Drake question is, let's get right to it. Do you think that Josh Downs or Isaiah McKenzie will fare better in OTAs to take the wide receiver 3 spot? That's a good question. I think as far as OTAs go right now, I think Isaiah McKenzie probably has the leg up only because, you look at him, he's a veteran. He's been a slot wide receiver before for multiple years in the league, and he's healthy right now. Josh Downs was dealing with a bit of an injury this past week, so he missed a couple of practices. I think he's fine. I don't think it's anything serious, but Isaiah McKenzie already has a leg up, so I think he'll have that advantage now. I think the real battle between them will happen at training camp. That's when you'll get a chance to see those guys go to battle. I saw Isaiah McKenzie supporting Josh Downs on Twitter, saying how good of a receiver he was. I thought that was awesome. Typically guys, when they're competing with guys, you'll see some reservation to give the other guy credit because, at the end of the day, you're battling with this guy for playing time. But I always thought Isaiah McKenzie would be a much better wide receiver 4 for you than wide receiver 3. I know not a lot of people see that as a significant difference, but just check the amount of snaps that a wide receiver 3 gets in comparison to a wide receiver 4. Wide receiver 3s is basically essentially starters, in the NFL today because a lot of people are running 11 personnel. I do think Colts run a little bit less of 11 personnel than the typical, NFL team, but it's still tremendously important, to get production, to get a certain body type, to get a certain player type at that position. And luckily for the Colts, that Josh Downs and Isaiah McKenzie both fit that. But Josh Downs just has a ton more upside because we just haven't seen him yet, and his ability to create big plays, I think is going to serve him well in this offense. And I just like Isaiah McKenzie right now as far as OTAs go, but I expect in training camp for it to be a real battle. And who knows if Anthony Richardson started, maybe the chemistry that Josh Downs and Anthony Richardson are already displaying will give him a slight nod and help him win the job. All right, man. So let's get to these questions. First question is I'm gonna go with my man at Robbins Lucas. Shout out to him, great writer for the Blue Stable. Good buddy of mine. I'm gonna read this question because he sent me a really good one. So shout out to Noah. Shout out to Noah, someone that's also awesome in the content world. He says, which record is most likely to break in 2023? Y'all follow me because this one is a tough one. Number one, Richardson sets the rookie QB rushing record, which is 816 yards. Buckner passes Ellis Johnson for the most sacks by a defensive tackle in Indianapolis Colts history, which is 33 and a half. He needs 9 more, by the way. Or Downs sets the Colts rookie receptions record, which is 66. This is tough. This is extremely tough because Richardson would essentially have to start day one for him to get this record. I'm gonna go Buckner. I'm gonna go Buckner getting 9 sacks. I think it's certainly possible with the way this defensive line looks. I think this is actually the deepest defensive line rotation has been in several years. I like all of the talent that they've brought in. They brought in specific guys for specific roles. And I have a question on that later, so I won't dive too deep into it right now, but that's a really good question, Jay. And I didn't even think I would go Buckner initially, but the rookie rushing record is just so high. I do think Richardson's more than capable enough of breaking 816 yards. I just don't know if he will. And 66 catches for a rookie is just tough when you're a wide receiver 3. I don't think it's a lot of wide receiver 3s that come into the league and start off with 70 catches in a season. It just doesn't happen typically unless an injury happens and that wide receiver gets elevated to wide receiver 1. Next question is from at the Coconut Jones, my man B-Rod. He says he's going to steal a question he saw posted yesterday. I wasn't on Twitter much yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to see this. I'm sure some of you probably has. What would make you happier? AR5 wins Rookie of the Year, but the Colts end up below 500, or Minshew plays the entire season and lead the Colts on a playoff run? And I asked him after he sent this question for clarity, let me define deep playoff run. So just so we know for sure, and I didn't want to have to tell him that I can't answer his question because I didn't have enough information. But he said, let's say he wins a wild card game and then loses a close game in the divisional round. Great question. To me, the answer is not close. I would definitely have Anthony Richardson winning Offensive Rookie of the Year because I think that would mean he showed promising signs, and that's more beneficial for the future than a divisional round playoff loss. Winning is important to me. Let's not get that misconstrued, and I do think it would be good morality-wise, even for Ballard, as far as job security and everything else. If the Colts made a run in the playoffs, it would be fun. We would enjoy that season. But for the long-term benefit of the team, I would rather Anthony Richardson win Rookie of the Year. You miss the playoffs. Because if you miss the playoffs, that means you have pretty decent draft capital unless you missed it by a game or two, then you're kind of picking in no man's land. But if he stinks or he wins 5 games and he wins Rookie of the Year, I mean, you're picking somewhere in the top 10. And I take that in a heartbeat. Like that's what I want. Get another premium talent on his team via the draft. And then when he shows that he could play at that level, you kind of know what you need to support him now. So going into year 2, you can kind of surround him with all the pieces he needs to be successful. And that's what I think is most important here. You can't lose sight of what's the most important goal for this season is, and that's for Anthony Richardson to display, franchise quarterback talent. Like for him to flash in certain areas. Now, if he goes out and put it together for a full season, then I'll be ecstatic. It just doesn't happen like that too often for rookies. I mean, the last rookie quarterback we seen really just light it up like that, I believe, was Justin Herbert, I believe, won Rookie of the Year, and he was phenomenal his rookie season, and that was actually unexpected. Tyrod Taylor's the starter. I believe had a procedure done, and something went wrong, and next thing you know, he was out, and now Justin Herbert was just thrown in the fire, and he absolutely lit it up. And guess who was there? Shane Steichen was the OC of that team. So hopefully it happens again. We see that have something similar. Well, not similar, of course. We don't want Gardner Minshew to go on for a procedure and get messed up, but hopefully Anthony Richardson is as successful as Justin Herbert was. So let's get to the next question from my man Patrick Rye, who's in the chat right now. He asked me a really good question, and I kind of got a story to answer it. So let's get to it. He said, "Did you grow up following the Saints?" For the people that don't know, I am from New Orleans. I still kind of live in New Orleans. I stay about 30 minutes, 45 minutes outside of New Orleans. He said, "Did you grow up following the Saints, but then switch over to the Colts when guys like Falk, Manning, and Wayne played there? Are you the lone Indy supporter in that area? And how was it sitting through Super Bowl?" Oh my God. Why would you bring up such a dark day time in my life? Okay, to kind of break this question down, no, I never was a Saints fan, and it's because my father, he wasn't a Saints fan. He was around for the inception of the Saints, and he didn't like the way the Saints went about doing business when they first became a franchise or organization. So he never was a Saints fan. He actually hated the Saints fans. I mean, he actually hated the Saints as an organization. And while he didn't pass that down to me, it kind of just rubbed off on me, So when I was a kid looking for a team, Marshall Falk is from pretty much the same area. He wasn't like a highly touted guy. Went to San Diego State, but he was just a special guy, and he was already playing for the Colts at the time. And then the Colts went on to draft Peyton, who is literally, the best football player in New Orleans as well. And Reggie Wayne literally played for my rival high school. I wasn't in high school at the time. Reggie Wayne was, but the high school I eventually graduated from, like they're big rivals with Reggie Wayne's high school. So just have a lot of familiarity with New Orleans, between New Orleans and the Indianapolis Colts. It made it easy for me to root for them and to support them. And it pretty much was Peyton. Peyton. Joseph Adai is another guy who played for the Colts that went to LSU. Has New Orleans ties. It's a lot of guys. Like it's a lot of eerie connections between the Indianapolis Colts and the city of New Orleans. And ironically, the Colts losing the Super Bowl to the New Orleans Saints, I always felt like Peyton gave the Saints that pick. Reggie Wayne gave up on the route. It was just kind of like, two New Orleans guys letting the New Orleans Saints win their first Super Bowl in franchise history. I always felt like it was rigged. But at the time, I was living in Atlanta. Now, anybody that knows anything about the Saints in Atlanta, they absolutely hate each other. I was living in Atlanta for 2 years while my brother was off. My brother was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals at the time, and I was kind of staying at his house, keeping everything in order. But he had a house in Atlanta because that's where he graduated college from. So I was living in Atlanta, and they absolutely hate people that's Saints fans. They hate people from New Orleans. It's the biggest rivalry ever. So I was in Atlanta for 2 years. I had to pretend to fake like the Saints. I was just because I didn't like the way the people in Atlanta used to handle people from New Orleans. So I had to kind of fake root for them. Yes, sir, Patrick Rye. He graduated from Georgia Tech for sure. Um, Actually Georgia Tech's all-time leader in tackle for losses. Great guy, man. Great player. But yeah, so I had to fake like the Saints while I was living in Atlanta. But when the Saints beat the Colts in the Super Bowl, I could have crawled in a hole and died. I had thousand phone calls, thousand text messages from people who really knew me and knew I was how passionate I was about being a Colts fan. And it sucked, man. It absolutely sucked. But when I went out in public, and interacted with people from Atlanta, I had to fake act like I was happy that the Saints won the Super Bowl. But it was tearing me down inside, man. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. Longest 2 years of my life, fake liking the Saints when I was living in Atlanta. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Next question. Next question is from Stats Matt. Shout out Stats Matt at Maringer5. He said, well, "What would be considered a success for AR and for Steichen in 2023 for me?" Oh, a success for AR would just be for him, like I said earlier, for him to just show signs of growth, show flashes of greatness, and actually flash the ability to be elite, to become one of the guys, like to show that high end upside, even if it's in few spurts and it's only a little. I would be happy with that because that would give me something to look forward to with this organization. The wins and losses, they'll come and go as far as this season. I'm not really concerned with that. I just want to see flashes from him and some of the other young guys who can prove to be franchise pillars and building blocks for this team moving forward. I think that's what this season is about, establishing those and seeing who you're going to move forward with and who you can continue to build this team around. So, as far as Steichen goes, I think he needs to modernize this offense. Something Frank Reich was supposed to do, and Frank Reich was attempting to do, to his credit, but he never kind of really got there. But now that you have a quarterback that is perfect for the modern era of football, Steichen has pretty much all the tools he needs in order to run the offense that he wants to run. Now, to what level of success, we'll see. But as long as this offense can look like a modernized offense and trending in the right direction, I think this season is a win for Steichen. You can't ask him to come in here with this football team and if you don't go to the playoffs or win a playoff game, the roster's not that. Like, let's stop, fooling ourselves. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I think the Colts are a solid team. I don't think the Colts are a good team. I think they're solid. They still have a couple of holes, as I see you guys talking about in the comments, and I got a couple of Twitter questions about it, and I'll get to it. The biggest being interior offensive line. But this team is not a team that's gonna win 11 games. I don't believe. Now, can they come out and do it? Hell yeah, it's football. Who knows? Like, I can't say what they will or won't do, but I just don't think this roster is in that place. But I don't think it's far off. Like, let's get that straight too. I think with a competent quarterback play, if the offensive line shows signs of getting back to the way they looked 2 years ago, then okay, now you're cooking. But that's a lot to ask. Apparently the Colts feel like they're closer to that than I do because they haven't made any significant changes to the offensive line besides something they flashed in OTAs that I'm gonna expound on a little more when I get to this question. They haven't made any significant changes, so obviously they don't feel like the offensive line was that far away. Maybe Steichen reviewed the tape, think it was he saw something he could work with. Now I do think his offensive scheme is a bit more friendlier for this offensive line. Like Ballard drafts these athletes. These are guys on the offensive line that can move well. Some lighter guys, that struggles with anchoring down. We saw that was a problem. But if these guys all move well in space. These are great athletes. If you can get the communication down, then I think you have something to work with. And I think that's what Steichen is going to do. He's going to weaponize this offensive line the same way Philly did. Now, Philly has a lot more talent, not a lot more talent, but they're definitely more talented and better coached than the Indianapolis Colts offensive line, and that's what the main problem is. So, I'm not sure what Tony Sperano Jr. is gonna do because I haven't seen him be an offensive line coach anywhere else. He's only been assistant, so I don't know exactly what kind of impact he's gonna have on this offensive line. But if he can coach them up the right way and get the communication aspect on par, then I'm excited actually about this offensive line. That would really be a significant boost because they played so terrible last season. Like even just competent play will be a significant improvement from last year. And if they can actually become a good offensive line again, which they should be with the type of money and resources you've invested in it, then I think, they'll be on the up and up. But the scheme is beneficial for these type of guys, these type of offensive line, light on their feet, the kind of guys that move and get out in space and put a hat on guys. I think they all excel in that aspect of the scheme. Let me just get to this question because I see it popping up in the chat, and somebody did ask it. I wanted to shout the guy out that asked it on Twitter because he asked it to me pretty often, a couple times a week. Daryl Ingram at Ingram Daryl 31. He said, "Do you anticipate Colts having interest in newly released interior offensive lineman Andrew Norwell for right guard?" Uh, yeah. It's gonna come down to price tag. Not saying that it should because the Colts have over $20 million in cap space available, but you've already poured so much money into that offensive line. At some point, you gotta be like, hey, like, where are you gonna draw the line at for your spending and your resources that you're devoting to one position group, especially when that position group performed the way they performed last year. So it's kind of like an extension of what we just talked about. But I believe they'll make a phone call to Norwell. They've made phone calls to offensive tackles, offensive tackles and offensive guards, which goes to show you that where their mindset is, they're thinking about bringing the best offensive lineman for their system, whether it's guard or tackle. The Colts feel like they have a versatile enough offensive line to where if they need to move Braden Smith inside to guard, which we saw at OTAs, and have Blake Freeland start at tackle, or maybe there's an outside the building tackle that they want to bring in and move Braden Smith to guard, you know, that's also something to consider. I seen on the Colts photos today from OTAs, they listed Braden Smith as a guard tackle. A couple people caught that and thought it was interesting. I saw it, but the Colts want the best five, man. Like, regardless. So if you don't see them bringing in guards, if you see them bringing in a tackle, just know essentially they serve the same purpose because they feel like they're flexible enough to move a guy that's really good at tackle, such as Braden Smith, and he's really good at guard. We know that he can play the position really well. He was initially that when he got drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, but he just excelled at the tackle spot, and they decided to leave him there, and they paid him as such. And another thing I just kind of want to debunk while we're here, and people say, okay, now they're going to have the most expensive guards in the NFL. Who cares if they have two tackles that's on rookie contracts? Like, does it matter? Okay, if you have expensive tackles and cheap guards, it's the same. It's the same, man. Like, it is the same. The value I know is different for guard for a tackle, but if you're getting great play out of it, why do you care which amount of money is allocated where if you're getting the same type of play? I just think that's, if you're spending $40 million on your offensive line, you're spending $40 million on your offensive line. I don't care where they line up at, as long as it works, as long as it's productive, and as long as it produces. The $40 million is going to be the $40 million. So I don't understand why people get upset because they see Braden Smith move to the inside, and now it's him and Quentin Nelson. Oh, they're the most expensive guard duo in the world, but you're paying your tackles pennies. So who cares? Like, man, work up front. Like Rasheed Powell said in the chat, wrong one. It starts in the trenches. Like, that's where the Indianapolis Colts always hung their hat on. That's what Chris Ballard has hung his hat on, offensive and defensive lines. Now, has he done a good job drafting defensive line? That's to be debated. But that's what he always hangs his hat on. That's what he preaches. And so that's what it is. I really don't care. But I do think, to answer the question, long roundabout way of answering the question, I think they'll make a phone call to Andrew Norwell, depending on the price tag. I know he's about 32, 33 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And he could be a stopgap option, you know, for the Colts while they work on what they want to do as far as the offensive line goes. Let's see. Next question. Marcus Lewis at Marcus underscore Lewis 5. I don't know if I ever rated his at name. I'm gonna rate his at name now. First name underscore last name 5. I don't know why he has the number 5 attached. I'm sure he has his reasons. I'll give it a 6.5. I'm not mad at that. Let's get to his question. He said, I hear Tim Hasselback say a few weeks ago that he would be fine with playing AR once he can demonstrate that he can call the line protections more than anything. If this is what a former NFL quarterback says, do you think AR experience at UF helps move his progress along? Absolutely. Absolutely. We saw several times. Well, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I saw several times that, him call protections at the line of scrimmage, him slide the line to the left and to the right, him max protect when needed. I think he's right where he needs to be as far as his development in that area goes. He's going to have to get better because there's different types of fronts that he's going to see in the NFL that he just never saw in college. So he's going to have to learn through experience as far as that goes. But I think he's right on schedule as far as where he is mentally, in the way he plays the game. Like I, I I don't think his mental side get talked about enough. Actually, when you're evaluating Anthony Richardson as a player, it's just all physical. You talk about the strength, the speed, the way he maneuvers in the pocket is awesome. Like I think that's rare. Like his pocket feel, and that's something that's big to me. Like I need you to feel pressure when you're in the pocket. Like after watching what happened to Matt Ryan and Nick Foles, even Carson Wentz. Like I don't think Carson Wentz feel. Oh, Marcus Lewis is in here, man. Oh, he's an alpha, and that's his line. Oh, shout out to the alphas, man. I almost pledged when I was in college, man. That's another story for another day. But I rock with the alphas for sure. Still bang with a couple of them, man. But yeah, when it comes to A Rich, like the middle side, the processing, he does these things. He go through his progressions. He reads. He does half side reads. He does whole side reads when he scans the field. And not a lot of people talk about that because you're just enamored with the physical ability. But I think he's right where he needs to be from a mental standpoint, which is why I never was against him starting from day one in the first place. I never thought he was as raw as people make him seem to be. And they only do that because they just look at the counter stats from him at Florida. And that's understandable. I get it. For lazy scouting, that's that's why people do it, whatever, but I'm not entertaining that. Damon Burton says, I don't know if it's Damon or Damon. My bad if I messed it up. But no disrespect, my brother. Was anybody upset at signing Matt Gay this offseason? I'm not. I thought it was a great move. Yeah, and shout out to Matt Gay because I initially I talked to him right after he got signed, and he was super excited, when he got picked up by the Colts because he was here briefly a few years ago, and he was just pumped up and excited, man. And the Colts just wanted some stability at the kicker position. I know they had that last year, but kicking it can kind of be like just a hot and cold thing. You can be one of the most accurate kickers in the NFL, and then just be awful the next year. Like it's so volatile from year to year. Shout out to my guy Zach Hicks, my colleague, who talks about that all the time. But Matt Gates, really good. Ballard wanted to establish some long-term stability at the position. Guess he just got tired going from year to year as far as that went. And that's why, we seen him go out there and make the move. Really aggressive, super early in free agency when he went out and did it. And I was just shocked more so, not upset at all because I don't have no problem with the move. You're tired of holding your breath when these end of the game situations come on, especially with with Blankenship, man. That was just that was a headache, man. Just struggling dealing with that. But I'm glad, man. I'm glad Matt Gay's here. Lights out, good dude, deserves the money, and I'm happy he's now a coach. Patrick Rye with the first super chat of the day. Shout out to Patrick Rye for the $1.99, always holding us down over here at the Horseshoe Huddle. His question is, who ends up with the top 5 picks in the 2024 draft? Ay. Oh, this is a tough one. I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals twice because I do think the Houston Texans end up in the top 5. I know a lot of people are bullish on them and think with DeMeco Ryans coming in and the talent they added that they'll be a little bit better than a bottom 5 team. But as I'm just looking around the league, man, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. You know, I just think the Texans are going to be a bottom 5 team. I have the Texans. I have the Arizona Cardinals. Whew. Man. I have the Chicago Bears. I have the Chicago Bears. I have the Chicago Bears. Um, I have the Washington football team. Yes, I have the Washington football team. That division is just stacked, man. Playing Dallas twice, playing the Eagles twice, and then playing the Giants, who I think is on the up and up, who has just had a fantastic coaching clinic that Brian Dable put on next year. I think they're going to be solid. Yeah, Washington. I don't think Washington roster is not good. I just think their quarterback situation is, if they were starting Jacoby, then I wouldn't have them here. But starting Sam Howell, yeah. Am I missing one? I said the Cardinals twice, the Bears, Washington. My brother would kill me if I said the Rams, but oh man. Let's go Tampa. Tampa is my 5th. I just think Baker's awful, and I think the team is just really old, and they need a youth, and they need some injection of youth. I do think they're a very talented team, but I think the quarterback, I think Baker's too volatile, and Kyle Trask is Kyle Trask. Shout out to my man Tyreek Taylor. Downloaded. Donated $1.99 as well with just a super sticker. With a sticker. Okay, that was cute. Uh, I seen a question say, is Doolin going to be given a larger role? Lindsey Ross. I don't know. I don't think so. Just based off where he was at in the pecking order last year compared to where he is now. I seen he was running with the ones because Pittman and Pierce didn't practice. But I do think as the season go along, when Isaiah McKenzie and Josh Downs gets more acclimated with the offense, it'll allow Doolin to focus strictly on special teams, where he's one of the best special teamers in the NFL. That's where you want him at. I do think he's serviceable as a wide receiver, but he's not a guy that you really want in your top 3, maybe 4. But I think he's a great wide receiver 5. And I think he'd be a solid wide receiver 4. You just don't want him to be a regular guy lining up at receiver for you. Christopher Golson. I wonder how many games. I wonder as well, man. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer for you. Burton asked a funny question, so I had to put it up. You guys let him know how glad we are that we didn't draft Will Levis. I always still think that's the funniest story of the offseason because so many national media people was pushing Will Levis to Indianapolis Colts, and I was befuddled, man. I really was befuddled. I was hitting people behind the scenes because literally everybody I talked to, a couple of people within the Colts organization, they never gave me any intention that we were going to pick Will Levis. Never. There's not one tweet you can find from me saying the Colts were going to draft Will Levis. I think they thought he was a good option if everyone was gone. I think they was fine with him in that sense, and that's what I tweeted. But they would never consider any of the top three guys. Just wasn't going to happen. Even when I tiered it, I believe, in January. Either January or February. One of you guys could find the tweet. I put a tier system how the Colts felt. It was CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson on tier one, Bryce Young on tier two, and Will Levis on tier three. That's how they saw it. That's how they saw it. That's what I was told, and that's what I reported. But national media, guys with more followers than me, who knows so much, they said otherwise, and people got my mentions about it, and it was cool. I didn't get upset. I didn't argue. I just we'll see. All right. Next question from at Week. He said, realistically, how many dubs do you see Richardson getting us if he starts week one? I think 10 is possible. Woo. Shit. My man said he think 10 is possible. I don't see 10. I do see a very easy schedule, though. I see a lot of winnable games on the schedule. If, Richardson was heading into his second and third year. Rookies are gonna rookie, man. It sucks that they're gonna drop games that they shouldn't drop, but it's gonna be learning situations. I think he's gonna learn a ton. I think he's gonna look good, but I don't think he's gonna get a ton of wins. I just don't. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because the schedule is trash, as Patrick Rice said. The schedule is trash. Like the games are there to win. And I think it'll be a lot of close games. But what we see when young quarterbacks are in, these close games, they typically drop those because they just don't have the experience or how to maneuver in situations like those. Christopher Golson, the guy who asked the question earlier, said he thinks it's going to be 7. I think it's going to be 7 in that range as well. Anywhere from 5 to 7. I'm cool with. If it's less than that, then we'll be drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., which I also am cool with. Somebody asked me what I think of the Garoppolo situation. I don't think of the Garoppolo situation. He's not a coach. Nah, I'm joking. I'm bullshit. It's weird, man. Garoppolo's situation is extremely weird, and also, it's also making me feel like, are the Raiders trying to find a way to get Brady to play for Vegas? That's what's happening. I hope not. I'm sick of Tom Brady. I hope he stays retired. He's right up there at the top of my most hated sports players in NFL. Well, in sports history, not NFL history. Tom Brady's right at the top for any sport for me. Sammy D. Luffy says, I need to see more practice footage of AR, man. Yeah, man. I was talking about that earlier, probably before you came in. That is extremely frustrating that the media only gets to go to one, practice. And then you see all the videos, all the tweets you get about how they're doing. Man, even when I get like calls behind the scenes from people that's there, they can't even tell me certain things or certain things they can't talk about, but it's frustrating. But you get over it. As long as it's not nothing concerning. When I hear something concerning, it's gonna be hard for me to keep that from y'all, man. Like I want y'all to know as soon as I know. I know it'll destroy a lot of relationships though, so I can't operate that way. But when it's something bad, I'll throw y'all a hit. Like, hey man, if you see me post a gift like this, man, just a cigarette in my hand or something like that, just know it's not going well. But so far, so good. Everything I've heard from AR, and it's funny because I was telling you guys about it last week, and then media practice was the next day after this show came out, and Steichen kind of echoed everything I pretty much said. He went into further detail, of course, but I was kind of trying to let y'all know where he was last week. to kind of give y'all guys a heads up, and I'll continue to try to do stuff like that. Give let you guys know what I hear, and so far so good right now. I believe there was a Shaq Leonard question somewhere too. Dum dum dum. Cue the sad music. We have to talk about it. I believe we have to talk about it. I think I had one. I did. It's from Steinemite. Where is he? Here he is. At Steinemite for you. Highest app rating in Saddle Up history. I believe it's an 8. He says Leonard, when healthy, is phenomenal, but it's been a long time since that's been the case. At this point, unless I see him consistently playing this season, I just don't know if you can count on him. How off base am I here? Man. Before I get into this question, shout out to you, Chris. I appreciate it, man. That's what I do it for, man. Appreciation. So you appreciate me. It's just nothing but fuel to me to keep going and keep doing what I do, man. So thank you. I appreciate that. As far as Shaq, I wouldn't say the panic meter's up there. If it is for you, I can understand why. What we've been through this emotional roller coaster the last basically 2 years with Shaq. One of those seasons, though, let's not forget he played. And he played at a defensive player of the year level. And he did it on one leg. So, like, you have to put into perspective just how great of a player we're talking about here. Like, he's really good. Like, really, really good. And he did that on one ankle, man. Like I say, he led the NFL and he forced 12 turnovers, I believe, 8 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. Hey, he was just a wrecking machine. He single-handedly sealed games that year. He was the only closer we had on defense, pretty much. It is a problem that he's still not playing, still not practicing with the team. But I won't be concerned or panicked until training camp comes. Now, if training camp comes and Leonard is still not practicing, still not running, he's still not jumping or looking like himself, then the panic meter is going to shoot up, and we can revisit this conversation, and I'll let it all out how I feel. But I'm not going crazy yet, Steinemite. I'm not going crazy just yet. Let's give it to training camp and see how he looks, because I do know he's in a practice facility every day. He's working his ass off to get back, man. Like, and that's all you can ask for with a guy such as Shaq Leonard. Mentally coming back from these injuries is tough, man. Like, I saw it firsthand. I got to tell y'all, my brother played 3 years in the NFL, and injuries is what ended his career. Lucky he was able to rebound coaching and's been very successful in that regard. But as a player, I saw the damage mentally that those season-ending injuries can do to somebody. So I tend to sympathize a little bit more, with the player when he's going through these type of things. Yes, it's tough on him physically, but mentally it's way worse. Like, getting up every day to try to get this thing back to where it was, wondering if you're ever going to become the player that you were, or make any more money in the sport. And I'm speaking from a lower level, but it's an awful thing to go through repeatedly, bro. Trust me on that one. Got another super chat from inside our guys over there inside the shoe, man. Shout out to them. He said, "Who starts at corner, and who do you think is released?" Ooh, this is a good one, man. I put a bold take out there. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Oh, maybe a week ago. I can't even remember when I said it. I still haven't bought it to Twitter yet, just because I'm just not ready for what the backlash that comes from it. I really think Darius Rush has more upside than Julius Brent. And I like Juju Brents. I think he's going to fit well. I think he's a perfect type of Gus Bradley corner. I think he's going to fit really well with the Colts. I just see more upside and more versatility with Darius Rush when I watch him. Just the way he moves is a bit different. Starting corners is going to be Isaiah Rodgers and Juju Brent. If we're talking outside, I think Kenny's going to start in the slot. I think that's pretty much a lock. But I think Darius Rush is going to push for playing time, man. Like, he's going to be too good to keep on the sideline. I know you guys heard about the pick he caught last week in 7-on-7s, the pick 6 he caught off I believe it was Sam Ellinger. Yeah, it was Ellinger that he caught slipping. But he's been doing that all week. Like guys have been calling me, telling me Darius Rush has looked really good, and he's capitalizing on the fact that Julius Brent is out right now with what I believe with a wrist injury, and he'll be back for training camp for sure. But he's taking advantage of these extra reps that he's getting, man, and I think that's important. You know, the Colts are going to look at this. They're going to see what they have, and they're going to take the whole summer. Oh yeah, it's another comment from inside the shoe. He says Rush went off at Senior Bowl too. Yeah, and it's funny because when I watched Darius Rush, I was actually watching the other South Carolina cornerback. I was watching Cam Smith, and a lot of people was telling me how good Cam Smith was, and Cam Smith is good. But I felt like Darius Rush was better than him when I was supposed to be watching Cam Smith. I found myself watching Darius Rush. Then I saw him at the Senior Bowl when I went down there, and I always like to kind of get eyes on a person in person, if that makes any sense, because sometimes what you see on tape it doesn't match what you actually see in person. And Darius Rush was the way he was moving out there was just different. A lot of cornerbacks didn't have good Senior Bowl practices, like practice in and practice out. They always say the first day is best for the cornerbacks because the quarterback is playing with these new receivers that he's never played with. So they have to establish a rapport, chemistry. So the cornerbacks typically come out with a head start on day one. So he had a good day one. I didn't really pay it no mind because of what I know about scouting players. Then I seen him day two. He had another solid day, and day three might have been his best day. So I was really impressed with him. I was surprised to see the Colts get him so low. I actually thought he was a second, third round talent easily, but he's a guy with a ton of upside. Big guy, can run with the wind, fluid in his hips movement. Back pedal is really good. I think he can play off or press man. We're gonna see, man. Maybe I'm higher on him than everybody else, but just remember I told you guys this. Let me see if I have any more questions. Let me see if I have any more questions. Oh, I see Lindsay. Lindsay asked a question. How did Evan Hall look in OTAs? You know what? That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you because I haven't asked anyone about Evan Hall, which I probably should have, but I just didn't. And I know he's getting a lot of touches, especially with Jonathan Taylor being out right now. Trying to heal up, who is expected to be 100% by the time training camp comes around. So thank goodness for that. I know they're working on an extension with Jonathan Taylor. I assume them to move on to Michael Pittman afterwards and work on the extension as well. Chris Ballard really wants to lock those two guys up. Have no idea when it's gonna happen, but I do know that they're working on it. And shout out to Michael Pittman again for getting his son, having his baby last week. People didn't see him at practice, freaked out, thought he was holding out for contractual obligations, but that wasn't the case at all. Shout out to Tyler Bell. Tyler Bell must have gotten here late because I answered this question earlier today. So this show will post immediately after it's over. It's almost over. I didn't even realize it was 6:52, and I've been talking to you guys that long, which is crazy. I guess I can say I talk too much, but yeah, I answered it earlier, man. And I went into detail kind of about it, about how I became a Colts fan and how long I've been a fan. Because being in New Orleans, I get laughed at a lot because the Saints got their first Super Bowl off us, so that sucks. Let me see if I have any more questions, man, before I get up out of here. I think we might have them though. So if anybody got anything quick they want me to hit on really quickly. Oh, I do have another question. From at Football is King 7. He says, what is the likely rotation of the defensive front? Seems deep. We'll be curious to what teams want to put guys for different advantages. Really good question. I like this defensive front group. I like them a lot. You start off with Dio, Big Grove, Buck, Quiddy. I'm gonna say good luck trying to run on that group. Quiddy's great against the run. We know what Grove and Buck do against the run, and Dio's solid against the run. I like him a lot off the edge in run situations. Um, when you go to the depth, for as depth purposes, you still have Samson Ebukam, who's solid against the run. Out of Barway, whew, that name I almost smoked that name. But you want to see him in the middle. He's a guy that has to pick up a couple of pounds. He has the frame to do it, but he's such an explosive athlete. Taven Bryant, backup defensive tackle, is not great against the run. Uh, he makes me a little nervous. Tyquan Lewis, if he's healthy, he's a guy that we saw. I know it's a big if on if he's healthy, but he's a guy that we saw play really well before he went down with an injury, and we saw that for pretty much the last 2 years. Well, it looked like he is turning the corner as a player and becoming a really good rotational piece. He just has to stay on the field, but that's a guy who's solid, who's really good against the run, and give you some pass rush juice as well. But probably my favorite for in second and third down in passing situations. Period. My favorite four guys out there would be Quiddy, DeForest Buckner inside, Dio inside, and Samson Ebukam on the other edge in that Leo role. And man, I think that those four could really get after it. I look really forward to passing situations with those four. All of those guys are guys that are capable of winning one-on-one situations, and some of those guys, due to just pure number standpoint, will get the one-on-one situations that they're looking for. And I think all of those guys are capable of being a good unit. You probably don't have a guy that's a dominant pass rusher out that group, but if you can get, three or four guys that all getting 8 to 10 sacks, then you're ecstatic with that. You're in a good place if you can get that kind of production out of those four guys. And I don't look at any of those guys and say you're incapable of getting 8 sacks. I just don't. I think they're explosive. I think they're athletic enough, and I think they all complement each other as far as their skill sets. And I see what Balor's trying to do, what they're trying to build. Gus Bradley is going to have to rotate more. I know he has a habit of playing guys a lot, but if you can get a consistent pass rush, I'd rather a consistent pass rushing group than just one dominant guy, because we've seen in the past, even when DeForest Buckner's had all pro seasons and been dominant, the Colts pass rush still struggled as a whole. I'm looking for more continuity from the position group as a whole rather than seeing one guy just separate itself and then the rest of the guys, is lackluster or whatever the situation may be. All right, man. I appreciate everybody who came rocked out with your boy. My guy Destin wasn't here. He'll be back next week, I'm sure. If not, you guys will be stuck with me again. And hopefully we don't make this a habit, because, I don't really like to talk this much. I don't really like, talking for an hour straight is pretty exhausting. I didn't even get a chance to sip any of my drink because I just didn't want any dead air in there. So maybe I'll get a co-host next time, or maybe I'll do it again solo, because it is fun to come out and rock with you guys and keep a steady pace to the show. I appreciate all you guys for showing up and asking questions so the show could flow pretty smoothly. It was constantly things to talk about, and I couldn't have did that without you guys pulling up. So everybody in the chat, man, if you sent a question, if you sent a comment, I appreciate it. If I didn't get a chance to answer your question and you had something that was really imperative that you wanted me to answer, just tweet me. Just tweet me, and I'll get right to you. I'll take care of that ASAP, man. Like I said, this has been a Saddle Up Show with Shad and Destin. I will see you guys next week where we could talk more about OTAs. Peace.